happen. If Saudi Arabia makes peace with Israel, then clearly we're not going to be in that powerful position anymore, where this little group of people has the ability to affect the entire Middle East. But people are tired of it. Saudi Arabia is tired of it. People are tired of it. And I think that even with what's going on, I don't think that peace with Saudi Arabia is off the table. I don't think it is.
No, probably not. No, I don't think so. No.
We'll have to see. Okay, number 6. Okay, so this is something that I'm sure it does happen. When you're saying about people having to, be mistreated in the West Bank, and the conditions in the West Bank are terrible, land being taken away, and trees being chopped down, and all of those things. I think it's terrible. I think that what you see as the complicity of the Israeli army and government is not as much as it is. I don't think so. Meaning there are people who are arrested and tried and go to jail for these types of attacks. When you see a video of army people together with people going into a house, I have no idea what the background is of that. I don't know who's who's responsible and who's not responsible. I don't know. I'm not saying it's impossible that there are not injustices. I'm not saying it's impossible at all. However, I do know for a fact that people are prosecuted. Israelis are prosecuted for these types of things, certainly for killing Palestinians, for sure. They're prosecuted. I think that there are many, many times where a Palestinian, just 2 days ago, a 16-year-old boy tried to he killed a police officer. He stabbed her, and she ended up dying a few hours later in the hospital in the old city, just a couple of minutes from where we live over here, by car. A 16-year-old boy. So in the press, that's literally reported as another Palestinian youth murdered in the ongoing struggle following October 7th. He's a terrorist. A 16-year-old boy with a knife who comes over to a police officer and stabs her in the heart, that's a terrorist. That's not a 16-year-old Palestinian boy. And this is all the time presented like this, all the time. I could show you over and over in news articles where it says, 3 youth murdered by Israeli forces, and then you see the Hamas or Islamic Jihad poster of these youth with their AK-47s, and they're not anymore AK-47s. Now they've got M4s, AR-15s, they've got, right, all the time this happens. So I want you to just be aware that many reports of this type of violence and this type of thing are not just innocent Palestinians minding their own business that are being killed. Maybe that does happen. I don't know, but there's no question that that's not all of the reports that you hear are not just, people being killed for sport or for fun or for intimidation. There are many, many times that people who are in the middle of committing attacks or involved in, that type of terrorist activity that are killed, and it's reported in the news as, the number of Palestinian killed. That's, I'm saying, like on the AP or Reuters, when it gives the count of, in 2023, there's already been, 175 Palestinian youth that were killed. The vast, vast majority of those 175 were children terrorists, 16, 17-year-olds who, with knives, with guns, were committing acts of terror, children. So again, I'm not saying that there's no injustice. I'm not saying that. However, I'm saying there's no question about it that there are many things that are presented in a very, very skewed fashion when it comes to this, even in the Western press. I agree with you that the Western press now is more on Israel's side in terms of this current war, but in terms of the ongoing struggle that's happening, when it is absolutely not presented that way. It is presented as violence on the side of Israel without mentioning the people that are being killed. I'll give you an example. I could send you a link to this. There was about 10 years ago, there was an attack in a shul, in a synagogue here in Jerusalem, in a place called Har Nof, where a person came in. And two people came in and they killed 4 people and wounded other people, one with a gun, one with a hatchet. They just went around and they were both killed. And CNN, visited the family who was mourning and did like a whole story about the pain of this family, that their son was killed. And it's sort of only mentioned as like an aside that these people were involved in a terrorist act, killing 4 innocent people. No army, nothing. It was religious.
Also terrible, huh?
Like me, I'll send you this link. And I was shocked. I wrote them a letter at the time. I said, the Boston Marathon bombers, right? You know what I'm talking about? Boston Marathon. Can you in a million years imagine a news story going to their parents when they're sitting in mourning and doing a whole story about how painful it is for the family that their kids were murdered after the Boston? It's outrageous, the type of presentation that happens, and I'll send you that link. But there's a lot of misrepresentation of the violence that happens. Again, I'm not saying that it's never unjust, but there's much more of a balance to it than what you are stating over here in this question number 6.
Well, from my side, 2 stories in the West Bank. I spend a lot of time with a dentist and a doctor. Very intelligent guys, very honest in my opinion, very balanced in their views. And then they describe cases where a Palestinian boy is sitting at his table doing his homework. Some Israeli soldiers spot him and they kill him. The doctor, he explains that Israeli snipers practice the ephemeral shot or something. They hit you in the groin, and there are only 2 possible outcomes: either you bleed to death, or if they can save you, you're paralyzed. And I have no reason to not believe these stories. Then my host family, the brother of the father of this host family was shot in the back by Israeli soldiers who passed by one day on an armored vehicle, and they just shot him for sport.
I don't believe that. I'm sorry. I just don't.
Sorry, but that was real. That was real.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that they drive around and shoot people in drive-by shootings for sport. That's not what happens over here. That's not what happens. I don't know, but you're definitely not hearing the whole story. There's no question about that. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what was it. Maybe they were trying to get somebody else or something else and all of this, but that just doesn't happen. It just does not happen. The soldiers don't.
I doubt it. I'm not saying that this happens every day or even every 2 days or every week. But
I don't know what to tell you, but that's just not true. That's just not true. That's not true that people are just shot for no reason at all. Peaceful people not doing anything, and people just come over and shoot them. That's just not true. There was a whole thing that happened a couple of years ago, that there was something like this, nothing nearly as bad, but there was a Palestinian that was going through a checkpoint, and then they went and they shot him in the back with a rubber bullet just for fun. That did happen with a rubber bullet.
I remember that story.
Yeah, okay, but first of all, it was presented on the news, and the video was shown as if they killed him, which is totally not the case. But
I know the perpetrator was punished.
Punished, sent to jail. Yeah, that. So I don't know. I don't believe that. I don't believe that.
People... And then well, maybe we should get to this March of Return, or
so that's the next question. So that's outrageous what you're saying. Let me show you something. I was just looking before this at a few different links to try to show you bits and pieces of this, but it's just absolutely not true. Here's one. 1 second. Let me share this with the screen with you here. They were highly violent. There were highly violent attacks that were happening at that time. They were throwing Molotov cocktails. There were people with machine guns that were embedded amongst the civilians. Hamas they don't wear uniforms. I'm saying even now in the videos, there's videos of Hamas firing rockets and all these things. They dress like civilians. They look like civilians. And this is from that time, from the 2018, during that time. And Hamas says most of the protesters killed by Israel in Gaza were members. This is like literally that, Israel says it shows that Hamas is using border protests as a cover for terrorist attacks. So yes, where there may be some innocent people that were caught in the crossfire, of course, I'm sure that happened, but this was absolutely not a case of just peaceful people walking over to the fence and saying, here we are, we want to come in, we want our land back, and Israel mowing them down with guns. That's absolutely not what happened. They were trying to breach the wall. They were trying to cut through. I'll show you another one. 1 second, another quotation from that same time period. And now you probably have heard the names of these places. Hold on 1 second here. Right, this is what Hamas was saying at that time, right? In May 2018, right? Hamas was so confident that they would succeed in breaching the fence. They sent messages via social media informing Palestinians their leaders would be giving victory speeches from Israeli communities. Ismail Haniya from Nachal Oz, right? That was one of the communities that was nearly wiped out, right? Islamic Jihad leader Khalil Achaya from Kfar Aza and Be'eri, right? These are the 3 towns that were just almost completely wiped out in the past, month by Hamas. And this was during the March of Return, quote unquote, March of Return. This is what they were saying. They were literally storming the wall with explosives, with guns, with Molotov cocktails, with burning tires to obscure with smoke so people wouldn't see what was happening. So now, again, is it possible that there was some overreaction? Is that possible? I'm sure it's possible. I'm sure that there were some people that got caught in the fire, a nurse or what have you. I'm sure that could have happened, but it's absolutely not the narrative that you presented, that it was just peaceful protests and people just coming and saying, we demand our land or whatever it is. And again, just to remind you, the land that they're talking about was never theirs. This is land that since the 1947 partition was meant to be Israel. This is not occupied land. It's only occupied by the people that you say you never heard of, who say that all of Israel is occupied. But that's what they're talking about. Be'eri and Kfar Aza and Nachal Oz, those are all places that were part of the partition, always meant to be for Israel. Not part of Gaza, not part of the West Bank, right? Those are regular Israeli towns in Israel proper by any recognized borders, right? But according to Hamas, it's all occupied. According to Hamas, it's all settlers. And, that's their perspective. So I just, again, the March of Return was not peaceful.
Can you tell me with 100% certainty that the ultimate goal of Hamas is to kill all Jews in Israel? Is that their wet dream?
In their charter. This is what they say. It's in their charter. He just said it again.
I know about the charter, but then I see critics saying, yeah, it's in the charter, but nobody cares.
He just said it in the interview. I'll send you that link for that. It's all over Twitter and the internet, where he said October 7th, October 10th, October a millionth.
I saw that.
He said,
he would do it again.
This is what their goal is. Their goal is to, and not only Israel, they're an Islamist regime. They want to take over the world with Sharia law. That's what they want. Israel is the one that they're fighting against right now. But absolutely, they are expressly a genocidal group, and it's nothing new. This is like what I showed you going back to 1948. Many of the Arabs, not all of them, of course, but many of the Arabs that invaded Israel in 1948 explicitly said, yes, we are going to genocide the Jews. It's going to be a glorious massacre. That's what, this is nothing new. This is an outgrowth of groups that have been doing this for 70 years, 80 years, 100 years almost now. So again, it's so hard for people with the Western mindset to appreciate this and understand that people don't think like we do. They don't.
This is very foreign to me, this kind of thinking.
Yes, and that's part of why people have a very, very hard time seeing Israel's point of view in all of this, because we assume that people think like us and people value the same things that we value, but they write all the time about how they want to martyr their children and they're proud of their children martyrs, and that's the difference between the Israelis and us. They cherish life, we cherish death. They literally say these things, literally, with, I could send you all of these links.
I saw some of that. Yeah.
This is how they think. And I think people like Kim Iverson and whatever, they just don't want to believe this because it's so foreign to them. And it's so hard to believe that there's people that are actually like this, but they are. And that's why people are saying Hamas is ISIS, because I think not that it is ISIS, but it's the same morality, the same moral code that the whole world saw that ISIS is. These are not peaceful people. These are not people that want, goodness and democracy and happiness for everybody. It's a genocidal jihadi approach. That is Hamas. They've never said anything opposite this ever. Arafat, at least he would lie to the Western media. Arafat would always say different things in Arabic and different things in English